Uzbekistan. Coordinates: 42 degrees north 63 degrees east, 42 degrees north 63 degrees east, 42, 63. Uzbekistan, UK, /Ʊzbɛkɪստәn, Z, /stɛn/ US, /Ʊzbɛkɪstәn, STN/ Uzbek, Uzbekistan pronounced, officially the Republic of Uzbekistan, Uzbek, Oʻzbekiston Respublikasi, is a doubly landlocked country in Central Asia and also a former Soviet republic. The sovereign state is a secular, unitary constitutional republic, comprising 12 provinces, 1 autonomous republic, and a capital city. Uzbekistan is bordered by 5 landlocked countries: Kazakhstan to the north, Kyrgyzstan to the northeast, Tajikistan to the southeast, Afghanistan to the south, and Turkmenistan to the southwest. Along with Liechtenstein, it is one of the world's only 2 doubly landlocked countries. What is now Uzbekistan was in ancient times part of the Iranian-speaking region of Transoxiana and Turan. The first recorded settlers were Eastern Iranian nomads, known as Scythians, who founded kingdoms in Crame, 8th-6th centuries BC, Bactria, 8th-6th centuries BC, Sogdia, 8th-6th centuries BC, Fergana, 3rd century BC, 6th century AD, and Margiana, 3rd century BC, 6th century AD. The area was incorporated into the Iranian Achaemenid Empire and, after a period of Macedonian Greek rule, was ruled by the Iranian Parthian Empire and later by the Sasanian Empire, until the Arab conquest of Iran in the 7th century. The Muslim conquest in the 7th century converted the majority of the population, including the local ruling classes, into adherents of Islam. During this period, cities such as Samarkand, Khiva and Bukhara began to grow rich from the Silk Road. The local Crimean dynasty, and Central Asia as a whole, were decimated by the Mongol invasion in the 13th century. After the Mongol conquests, the area became increasingly dominated by Turkic peoples. The city of Shahrazams was the birthplace of the Turco-Mongol warlord Timur, who in the 14th century established the Timurid Empire and was proclaimed the supreme emir of Turan with his capital in Samarkand. The area was conquered by Uzbek Shaybanids in the 16th century, moving the center of power from Samarkand to Bukhara. The region was split into 3 states: Khanate of Khiva, Khanate of Kokand, and Emirate of Bukhara. It was gradually incorporated into the Russian Empire during the 19th century, with Tashkent becoming the political center of Russian Turkestan. In 1924, after national delimitation, the constituent republic of the Soviet Union known as the Uzbek Soviet Socialist Republic was created. Following the breakup of the Soviet Union, it declared independence as the Republic of Uzbekistan on August 31, 1991. Uzbekistan has a diverse cultural heritage due to its storied history and strategic location. Its first major official language is Uzbek, a Turkic language written in the Latin alphabet and spoken natively by approximately 85% of the population. For 2013, Russian has widespread use as an interethnic communication language. Uzbeks constitute 81% of the population, followed by Russians, 5.4%, Tajiks, 4.0%, Kazakhs, 3.0%, and others, 6.5%. Muslims constitute 79% of the population while 5% of the population follow Russian Orthodox Christianity, and 16% of the population follow other religions or are non-religious. A majority of Uzbeks are non-denominational Muslims. Uzbekistan is a member of the CIS, UN, and the SCO. While officially a democratic republic, by 2008 non-governmental human rights organizations defined Uzbekistan as an authoritarian state with limited civil rights. Following the death of Islam Karimov in 2016, the second president, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, started a new course, which was described as a quiet revolution and revolution from above. He stated he intended to abolish cotton slavery, systematic use of child labor, exit visas, to introduce a tax reform, create 4 new free economic zones, and he amnestied some political prisoners. Relations with the neighboring countries of Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan and Afghanistan drastically improved. However, the Amnesty International report on human rights in the country for 2017-2018 described continued repressive measures, including forced labor and cotton harvesting, and restrictions on the movement of freed prisoners. The Uzbek economy is in a gradual transition to the market economy, with foreign trade policy being based on import substitution. In September 2017, The country's currency became fully convertible at market rates. Uzbekistan is a major producer and exporter of cotton. The country also operates the largest open-pit gold mine in the world. With the gigantic power generation facilities of the Soviet era and an ample supply of natural gas, Uzbekistan has become the largest electricity producer in Central Asia. Renewable energy constitutes more than 23% of the country's energy sector, with hydroelectricity and solar energy having 21.4% and 2% respectively. As of late 2018, the Republic was given a BB rating by both Standard & Poor, S&P, and Fitch. Strengths indicated by Brookings Institution include Uzbekistan having large liquid assets, high economic growth, and low public debt. Among the constraints holding the Republic back are low GDP per capita, something the government could influence by changing how it accounts for sectors of the economy not currently included. Geography. Uzbekistan has an area of 447,400 square kilometers, 172,700 square miles. It is the 56th largest country in the world by area and the 42nd by population. Among the CIS countries, it is the 4th largest by area and the 2nd largest by population. Uzbekistan lies between latitudes 37 degrees and 46 degrees north, and longitudes 56 degrees and 74 degrees east. It stretches 1,425 kilometers, 885 miles, from west to east and 930 kilometers, 580 miles, from north to south. Bordering Kazakhstan and the Arakan Desert, former Aral Sea, to the north and northwest, Turkmenistan and Afghanistan to the southwest, Tajikistan to the southeast, and Kyrgyzstan to the northeast. Uzbekistan is one of the largest Central Asian states and the only Central Asian state to border all the other 4. Uzbekistan also shares a short border, less than 150 kilometers or 93 miles, with Afghanistan to the south. Uzbekistan is a dry, landlocked country. It is one of 2 doubly landlocked countries in the world, that is, a country completely surrounded by landlocked countries, the other being Liechtenstein. In addition, due to its location within a series of endorheic basins, none of its rivers lead to the sea. Less than 10% of its territory is intensively cultivated irrigated land in river valleys and oases, and formerly in the Aral Sea, which has largely desiccated. The rest is vast desert, Kizilkum, and mountains. The highest point in Uzbekistan is the Kotsrit Sultan, at 4,643 meters, 15,233 feet, above sea level, in the southern part of the Gizar Range in Surkhandarya province, on the border with Tajikistan, just northwest of Dushanbe, formerly called peak of the 22nd Congress of the Communist Party. The climate in Uzbekistan is continental, with little precipitation expected annually, 100 to 200 millimeters, or 3.9 to 7.9 inches. The average summer high temperature tends to be 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, while the average winter low temperature is around -23 degrees Celsius, -9 degrees Fahrenheit. Environment. Uzbekistan has a rich and diverse natural environment. However, decades of questionable Soviet policies in pursuit of greater cotton production have resulted in a catastrophic scenario, with the agricultural industry being the main contributor to the pollution and devastation of both air and water in the country. The Aral Sea used to be the 4th largest inland sea on Earth, acting as an influencing factor in the air moisture and arid land use. Since the 1960s, the decade when the overuse of the Aral Sea water began, it has shrunk to about 10% of its former area and divided into parts, with only the southern part of the narrow western lobe of the South Aral Sea remaining permanently in Uzbekistan. Reliable, or even approximate data, have not been collected, stored or provided by any organization or official agency. Much of the water was and continues to be used for the irrigation of cotton fields, a crop requiring a large amount of water to grow. Due to the Aral Sea problem, high salinity and contamination of the soil with heavy elements are especially widespread in Kazakhstan, the region of Uzbekistan adjacent to the Aral Sea. The bulk of the nation's water resources is used for farming, which accounts for nearly 84% of the water usage and contributes to high soil salinity. Heavy use of pesticides and fertilizers for cotton growing further aggravates soil contamination. According to the UNDP, United Nations Development Programme, climate risk management in Uzbekistan needs to consider its ecological safety. Numerous oil and gas deposits have been discovered in the south of the country. Uzbekistan has also been home to seismic activity, as evidenced by the 1902 Andijan earthquake, 2011 Fergana Valley earthquake, and 1966 Tashkent earthquake. History. The first people known to have inhabited Central Asia were Scythians who came from the northern grasslands of what is now Uzbekistan, sometime in the first millennium BC. When these nomads settled in the region, they built an extensive irrigation system along the rivers. At this time, cities such as Bukhara, Bukhara, and Samarkand emerged as centers of government and high culture. By the 5th century BC, the Bactrian, Sogdian, and Tocharian states dominated the region. As East Asian countries began to develop its silk trade with the West, Persian cities took advantage of this commerce by becoming centers of trade. Using an extensive network of cities and rural settlements in the province of Transoxiana, and further east in what is today China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, the Sogdian intermediaries became the wealthiest of these Iranian merchants. As a result of this trade on what became known as the Silk Route, Bukhara and Samarkand eventually became extremely wealthy cities, and at times Transoxiana, Ma'aranar, was one of the most influential and powerful Persian provinces of antiquity. In 327 BC, Macedonian ruler Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire provinces of Sogdiana and Bactria, which contained the territories of modern Uzbekistan. A conquest was supposedly of little help to Alexander as popular resistance was fierce, causing Alexander's army to be bogged down in the region that became the northern part of the Macedonian Greco-Bactrian kingdom. The kingdom was replaced with the Uezi-dominated Kushan Empire in the 1st century BC. For many centuries the region of Uzbekistan was ruled by the Persian empires, including the Parthian and Sassanid empires, as well as by other empires, for example those formed by the Turco-Persian Hephthalite and Turkic Gokturk peoples. In the 8th century, Transoxiana, the territory between the Amu Darya and Sirdarya rivers, was conquered by the Arabs, Ali ibn Setter, becoming a focal point soon after of the Islamic Golden Age. Many notable scientists lived there and contributed to its development after the conquest. Among the achievements of the scholars during this period were the development of trigonometry into its modern form, simplifying its practical application to calculate the phases of the moon, advances in optics, in astronomy, as well as in poetry, philosophy, art, calligraphy and many others, which set the foundation for the Muslim Renaissance. In the 9th and 10th centuries, Transoxiana was included into the Samanid state. Later, Transoxiana saw the incursion of the Turkic-ruled Karakhanids, as well as the Seljuks, Sultan Sanjar, and Karakhidans. The Mongol conquest under Genghis Khan during the 13th century would bring about a change to the region. The Mongol invasion of Central Asia led to the displacement of some of the Iranian-speaking people of the region, their culture and heritage being superseded by that of the Mongolian Turkic peoples who came thereafter. The invasions of Bukhara, Samarkand, Urgench and others resulted in mass murders and unprecedented destruction, such as portions of Crimea being completely razed. Following the death of Genghis Khan in 1227, his empire was divided among his 4 sons and his family members. Despite the potential for serious fragmentation, the Mongol law of the Mongol Empire maintained orderly succession for several more generations, and control of most of Transoxiana stayed in the hands of the direct descendants of Chagatai Khan, the second son of Genghis Khan. Orderly succession, prosperity, and internal peace prevailed in the Chagatai lands, and the Mongol Empire as a whole remained a strong and united kingdom, Ulaspati, Satarkhan. During this period, most of present Uzbekistan was part of the Chagatai Khanate except Krym was part of the Golden Horde. After the decline of the Golden Horde, Krym was briefly ruled by the Sufi dynasty till Timur's conquest of it in 1388. Sufids rules Krym as vassals of alternatively Timurids, Golden Horde and Uzbek Khanate till Persian occupation in 1510. In the early 14th century, however, as the empire began to break up into its constituent parts, the Chagatai territory was disrupted as the princes of various tribal groups competed for influence. One tribal chieftain, Timur, Tamerlane, emerged from these struggles in the 1380s as the dominant force in Transoxiana. Although he was not a descendant of Genghis Khan, Timur became the de facto ruler of Transoxiana and proceeded to conquer all of western Central Asia, Iran, the Caucasus, Mesopotamia, Asia Minor, and the southern steppe region north of the Aral Sea. He also invaded Russia before dying during an invasion of China in 1405. Timur was known for his extreme brutality, and his conquests were accompanied by genocidal massacres in the cities he occupied. Timur initiated the last flowering of Transoxiana by gathering together numerous artisans and scholars from the vast lands he had conquered into his capital, Samarkand. By supporting such people, he imbued his empire with a rich Perso-Islamic culture. During his reign and the reigns of his immediate descendants, a wide range of religious and palatial construction masterpieces were undertaken in Samarkand and other population centers. Emir Timur initiated an exchange of medical discoveries and patronized physicians, scientists and artists from the neighboring countries such as India. His grandson Ulugh Beg was one of the world's first great astronomers. It was during the Timurid dynasty that Turkic, in the form of the Chagatai dialect, became a literary language in its own right in Transoxiana, although the Timurids were Persianate in nature. The greatest Chagatai writer, Ali Shir Navai, was active in the city of Herat, now in northwestern Afghanistan, in the second half of the 15th century. The Timurid state quickly split in half after the death of Timur. The chronic internal fighting of the Timurids attracted the attention of the Uzbek nomadic tribes living to the north of the Aral Sea. In 1501 the Uzbek forces began a wholesale invasion of Transoxiana. The slave trade in the Khanate of Bukhara became prominent and was firmly established. Before the arrival of the Russians, present Uzbekistan was divided between Emirate of Bukhara and Khanates of Khiva and Kokand. In the 19th century, the Russian Empire began to expand and spread into Central Asia. There were 210,306 Russians living in Uzbekistan in 1912. The Great Game period is generally regarded as running from approximately 1813 to the Anglo-Russian Convention of 1907. A second, less intensive phase followed the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. At the start of the 19th century, there were some 3,200 kilometers, 2,000 miles, separating British India and the outlying regions of Tsarist Russia. Much of the land between was unmapped. By the beginning of 1920, Central Asia was firmly in the hands of Russia and, despite some early resistance to the Bolsheviks, Uzbekistan and the rest of the Central Asia became a part of the Soviet Union. On October 27, 1924 the Uzbek Soviet Socialist Republic was created. From 1941 to 1945, during World War II, 1,433,230 people from Uzbekistan fought in the Red Army against Nazi Germany. A number also fought on the German side. As many as 263,005 Uzbek soldiers died in the battlefields of the Eastern Front, and 32,670 went missing in action. On June 20, 1990, Uzbekistan declared its state sovereignty. On August 31, 1991, Uzbekistan declared independence after the failed coup attempt in Moscow. 1st of September was proclaimed the National Independence Day. The Soviet Union was dissolved on 26 December of that year. Islam Karimov, ruler of Uzbekistan since independence, died on September 2, 2016. He was replaced by his longtime Prime Minister, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, on 14 December of the same year. Politics. After Uzbekistan declared independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, an election was held, and Islam Karimov was elected as the first president of Uzbekistan on December 29, 1991. The elections of the Oliy Majlis, Parliament or Supreme Assembly, were held under a resolution adopted by the 16th Supreme Soviet in 1994. In that year, the Supreme Soviet was replaced by the Oliy Majlis. The third elections for the bicameral 150-member Oliy Majlis, the Legislative Chamber, and the 100-member Senate for 5-year terms, were held on December 27, 2009. The second elections were held in December 2004 to January 2005. The Oliy Majlis was unicameral up to 2004. Its size increased from 69 deputies, members, in 1994 to 120 in 2004-05, and currently stands at 150. Karimov's first presidential term was extended to 2000 via referendum, and he was re-elected in 2000, 2007 and 2015, each time receiving over 90% of the vote. Most international observers refused to participate in the process and did not recognize the results, dismissing them as not meeting basic standards. The 2002 referendum also included a plan for a bicameral parliament consisting of a lower house, the Oliy Majlis, and an upper house, Senate. Members of the lower house are to be full-time legislators. Elections for the new bicameral parliament took place on 26 December. Following Islam Karimov's death on September 2, 2016, the Supreme Assembly appointed then Prime Minister Shavkat Mirziyoyev as interim president of Uzbekistan on September 8, 2016. Although the chairman of the Senate, Nigmatilla Yuldashev, was constitutionally designated as Karimov's successor, Yuldashev proposed that Mirziyoyev take the post of interim president instead in light of Mirziyoyev's many years of experience. Mirziyoyev was subsequently elected as the country's second president in the December 2016 presidential election, winning 88.6% of the vote, and was sworn in on December 14, 2016. On December 12, 2016, Deputy Prime Minister Abdullah Aripov was nominated to take over from Mirziyoyev as Prime Minister. Mirziyoyev removed most of Karimov's officials and urged the government to employ new, young people who love their country. After a year in office, Mirziyoyev is increasingly moving away from his predecessor's policy, which is especially visibly in his active foreign policy. He visited all the Uzbek regions and big cities to get acquainted with the implementation of the projects and reforms which he ordered. Many analysts and Western media compared his rule with Chinese Premier Deng Xiaoping or Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev. His rule has been quoted as being an Uzbek Spring. In May 2018, Mirziyoyev was nominated as a candidate for the Nobel Peace Prize by Alimshan Nazarov, who is a representative of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party. By the end of that year, he had been named the Asian of the Year of 2018 by the Asia Journalist Association, AJA. Human rights. The Constitution of the Republic of Uzbekistan asserts that democracy in the Republic of Uzbekistan shall be based upon common human principles, according to which the highest value shall be the human being, his life, freedom, honor, dignity and other inalienable rights. The official position is summarized in a memorandum: the measures taken by the government of the Republic of Uzbekistan in the field of providing and encouraging human rights and amounts to the following. The government does everything that is in its power to protect and to guarantee the human rights of Uzbekistan's citizens. Uzbekistan continuously improves its laws and institutions in order to create a more humane society. Over 300 laws regulating the rights and basic freedoms of the people have been passed by the parliament. For instance, an Office of Ombudsman was established in 1996. On August 2, 2005, President Islam Karimov signed a decree that abolished capital punishment in Uzbekistan on January 1, 2008. However, non-governmental human rights organizations, such as IHF, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, as well as United States Department of State and Council of the European Union, define Uzbekistan as an authoritarian state with limited civil rights and express profound concern about wide-scale violation of virtually all basic human rights. According to the reports, the most widespread violations are torture, arbitrary arrests, and various restrictions of freedoms, of religion, of speech and press, of free association and assembly. It has also been reported that forced sterilization of rural Uzbek women has been sanctioned by the government. The reports maintain that the violations are most often committed against members of religious organizations, independent journalists, human rights activists and political activists, including members of the banned opposition parties. As of 2015, reports on violations on human rights in Uzbekistan indicated that violations were still going on without any improvement. The Freedom House has consistently ranked Uzbekistan near the bottom of its freedom in the world ranking since the country's founding in 1991. In the 2018 report, Uzbekistan was one of the 11 worst countries for political rights and civil liberties. The 2005 civil unrest in Uzbekistan, which resulted in several hundred people being killed, is viewed by many as a landmark event in the history of human rights abuse in Uzbekistan. A concern has been expressed and a request for an independent investigation of the events has been made by the United States, the European Union, the United Nations, the US Chairman in Office and the US Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. The government of Uzbekistan is accused of unlawful termination of human life and of denying its citizens freedom of assembly and freedom of expression. The government vehemently rebuffs the accusations, maintaining that it merely conducted an anti-terrorist operation, exercising only necessary force. In addition, some officials claim that an information war on Uzbekistan has been declared and the human rights violations in Andijan are invented by the enemies of Uzbekistan as a convenient pretext for intervention in the country's internal affairs. Male homosexuality is illegal in Uzbekistan. Punishment ranges from a fine to 3 years in prison. Uzbekistan also maintains the world's second highest rate of modern slavery, 3.97% of the country's population working as modern slaves. In real terms, this means that there are 1.2 million modern slaves in Uzbekistan. Most work in the cotton industry. The government allegedly forces state employees to pick cotton in the fall months. World Bank loans have been connected to projects that use child labor and forced labor practices in the cotton industry. Recent developments. Islam Karimov died in 2016 and his successor Shavkat Mirziyoyev is considered by most to be pursuing a less autocratic path by increasing cooperation with human rights NGOs, scheduling Soviet-style exit visas to be abolished in 2019, and reducing sentences for certain misdemeanor offenses. However, the Amnesty International report on the country for 2017-2018 details many continued repressive measures. Administrative divisions. Uzbekistan is divided into 12 provinces, Viloyatlar, singular vilayat, compound noun viloyati, for example, Tashkent viloyati, Samarkand viloyati, etc., one autonomous republic, Respublika, compound noun Respublikasi, for example, Karakalpakstan Muxtar Respublikasi, Karalkapakstan Autonomous Republic, etc., and one independent city, Shahar, compound noun Shari, for example, Tashkent Shari. Names are given below in Uzbek, Russian, and Karakalpak languages when applicable, although numerous variations of the transliterations of each name exist. The provinces are further divided into districts. Chuman. Economy. Uzbekistan has the fourth largest gold deposits in the world. The country mines 80 tons of gold annually, 7th in the world. Uzbekistan's copper deposits rank 10th in the world and its uranium deposits 12th. The country's uranium production ranks 7th globally. The Uzbek National Gas Company, Uzbekneftgaz, ranks 11th in the world in natural gas production with an annual output of 60 to 70 billion cubic meters, 2.1 to 2.5 trillion cubic feet. The country has significant untapped reserves of oil and gas. There are 194 deposits of hydrocarbons in Uzbekistan, including 98 condensate and natural gas deposits and 96 gas condensate deposits. The largest corporations involved in Uzbekistan's energy sector are the China National Petroleum Corporation, CNPC, Petronas, the Korea National Oil Corporation, Gazprom, Lukoil, and Uzbekneftgaz. Along with many Commonwealth of Independent States or CIS economies, Uzbekistan's economy declined during the first years of transition and then recovered after 1995, as the cumulative effect of policy reforms began to be felt. It has shown robust growth, rising by 4% per year between 1998 and 2003 and accelerating thereafter to 7% to 8% per year. According to IMF estimates, the GDP in 2008 will be almost double its value in 1995, in constant prices. Since 2003, annual inflation rates averaged less than 10%. Uzbekistan has GNI per capita, $1,900 in current dollars in 2013, giving a PPP equivalent of $3,800. Economic production is concentrated in commodities. In 2011, Uzbekistan was the world's 7th largest producer and 5th largest exporter of cotton, as well as the 7th largest world producer of gold. It is also a regionally significant producer of natural gas, coal, copper, oil, silver and uranium. Agriculture employs 27% of Uzbekistan's labor force and contributes 17.4% of its GDP, 2012 data. Cultivable land is 4.4 million hectares, or about 10% of Uzbekistan's total area. While official unemployment is very low, underemployment, especially in rural areas, is estimated to be at least 20%. Cotton production in Uzbekistan is important to the national economy of the country. Uzbek cotton is even used to make banknotes in South Korea. The use of child labor in Uzbekistan has led several companies, including Tesco, C&A, Marks & Spencer, Gap, and H&M, to boycott Uzbek cotton. Facing a multitude of economic challenges upon acquiring independence, the government adopted an evolutionary reform strategy, with an emphasis on state control, reduction of imports and self-sufficiency in energy. Since 1994, the state-controlled media have repeatedly proclaimed the success of this Uzbekistan economic model and suggested that it is a unique example of a smooth transition to the market economy while avoiding shock, pauperism and stagnation. As of 2019, Uzbekistan's economy is one of the most diversified in Central Asia, what makes the country an attractive economic partner for China. The gradualist reform strategy has involved postponing significant macroeconomic and structural reforms. The state in the hands of the bureaucracy has remained a dominant influence in the economy. Corruption permeates the society and grows more rampant over time. Uzbekistan's 2005 Corruption Perception Index was 137 out of 159 countries, whereas in 2007 Uzbekistan was 175th out of 179 countries. A February 2006 report on the country by the International Crisis Group suggests that revenues earned from key exports, especially cotton, gold, corn and increasingly gas, are distributed among a very small circle of the ruling elite, with little or no benefit for the populace at large. The recent high-profile corruption scandals involving government contracts and large international companies, notably Telias, have shown that businesses are particularly vulnerable to corruption when operating in Uzbekistan. According to the Economist Intelligence Unit, the government is hostile to allowing the development of an independent private sector, over which it would have no control. The economic policies have repelled foreign investment, which is the lowest per capita in the CIS. For years, the largest barrier to foreign companies entering the Uzbekistan market has been the difficulty of converting currency. In 2003, the government accepted the obligations of Article 8 under the International Monetary Fund, IMF, providing for full currency convertibility. However, strict currency controls and the tightening of borders have lessened the effect of this measure. Uzbekistan experienced rampant inflation of around 1,000% per year immediately after independence, 1992 to 1994. Stabilization efforts implemented with guidance from the IMF paid off. The inflation rates were brought down to 50% in 1997 and then to 22% in 2002. Since 2003, annual inflation rates averaged less than 10%. Tight economic policies in 2004 resulted in a drastic reduction of inflation to 3.8%, although alternative estimates based on the price of a true market basket put it at 15%. The inflation rates moved up to 6.9% in 2006 and 7.6% in 2007 but have remained in the single-digit range. The government of Uzbekistan restricts foreign imports in many ways, including high import duties. Excise taxes are applied in a highly discriminatory manner to protect locally produced goods. Official tariffs are combined with unofficial, discriminatory charges, resulting in total charges amounting to as much as 100 to 150% of the actual value of the product, making imported products virtually unaffordable. Import substitution is an officially declared policy, and the government proudly reports a reduction by a factor of 2 in the volume of consumer goods imported. A number of CIS countries are officially exempt from Uzbekistan import duties. Uzbekistan has a bilateral investment treaty with 50 other countries. The Republican Stock Exchange, RSE, opened in 1994. The stocks of all Uzbek joint stock companies, around 1,250, are traded on RSE. The number of listed companies as of January 2013 exceeds 110. Securities market volume reached 2 trillion in 2012, and the number is rapidly growing due to the rising interest by companies of attracting necessary resources through the capital market. According to Central Depository, as of January 2013, par value of outstanding shares of Uzbek emitters exceeded 9 trillion. Thanks in part to the recovery of world market prices of gold and cotton, the country's key export commodities, expanded natural gas and some manufacturing exports, and increasing labor migrant transfers, the current account turned into a large surplus, between 9% and 11% of GDP from 2003 to 2005. In 2018, foreign exchange reserves, including gold, totaled around $25 billion. Foreign exchange reserves amounted in 2010 to $13 billion. Uzbekistan is predicted to be one of the fastest growing economies in the world, top 26, in future decades, according to a survey by global bank HSBC. Demographics. As of 2019, Uzbekistan has the largest population out of all the countries in Central Asia, and is the second largest, if Kazakhstan is excluded. Its 32,768,725 citizens comprise nearly half the region's total population. The population of Uzbekistan is very young, 34.1% of its people are younger than 14, 2008 estimate. According to official sources, Uzbeks comprise a majority, 80%, of the total population. Other ethnic groups include Russians 2%, Tajiks 5%, Kazakhs 3%, Karakalpaks 2.5% and Tatars 1.5%, 1996 estimates. There is some controversy about the percentage of the Tajik population. While official state numbers from Uzbekistan put the number at 5%, the number is said to be an understatement, and according to unverifiable reports, some Western scholars put the number up to 20% to 30%. The Uzbeks intermixed with Sarts, a Turco-Persian population of Central Asia. Today, the majority of Uzbeks are admixed and represent varying degrees of diversity. Uzbekistan has an ethnic Korean population that was forcibly relocated to the region by Stalin from the Soviet Far East in 1937 to 1938. There are also small groups of Armenians in Uzbekistan, mostly in Tashkent and Samarkand. The nation is 88% Muslim, mostly Sunni, with a 5% Shia minority, 9% Eastern Orthodox and 3% other faiths. The U.S. State Department's International Religious Freedom Report 2004 reports that 0.2% of the population are Buddhist, these being ethnic Koreans. The Bukharan Jews have lived in Central Asia, mostly in Uzbekistan, for thousands of years. There were 94,900 Jews in Uzbekistan in 1989, about 0.5% of the population according to the 1989 census, but now, since the dissolution of the Soviet Union, most Central Asian Jews left the region for the United States, Germany, or Israel. Fewer than 5,000 Jews remained in Uzbekistan in 2007. Russians in Uzbekistan represented 5.5% of the total population in 1989. During the Soviet period, Russians and Ukrainians constituted more than half the population of Tashkent. The country counted nearly 1.5 million Russians, 12.5% of the population, in the 1970 census. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, significant emigration of ethnic Russians has taken place, mostly for economic reasons. In the 1940s, the Crimean Tatars, along with the Volga Germans, Chechens, Pontic Greeks, Kumaks and many other nationalities were deported to Central Asia. Approximately 100,000 Crimean Tatars continue to live in Uzbekistan. The number of Greeks in Tashkent has decreased from 35,000 in 1974 to about 12,000 in 2004. The majority of Meskhetian Turks left the country after the pogroms in the Fergana Valley in June 1989. At least 10% of Uzbekistan's labor force works abroad, mostly in Russia and Kazakhstan, and other countries. Uzbekistan has a 99.3% literacy rate among adults older than 15, 2003 estimate, which is attributable to the free and universal education system of the Soviet Union. Life expectancy in Uzbekistan is 66 years among men and 72 years among women. Largest cities. Religion. Islam is the dominant religion in Uzbekistan, although Soviet power, 1924 to 1991, discouraged the expression of religious belief, and they were repressed during its existence as a Soviet republic. A 2009 Pew Research Center report stated that Uzbekistan's population is 93.3% Muslim. Russian Orthodox Christians comprised 7% of the population in 2014. An estimated 93,000 Jews lived in the country in the early 1990s. In addition, there are about 7,400 Zoroastrians left in Uzbekistan, mostly in Tajik areas like Khojand. Despite the predominance of Islam, the practice of the faith is far from monolithic. Uzbeks have practiced many versions of Islam. The conflict of Islamic tradition with various agendas of reform or secularization throughout the 20th century has left a wide variety of Islamic practices in Central Asia. 90% are Sunni Muslim and rest secular or non-believers, 1% are Shias. The end of Soviet control in Uzbekistan in 1991 did not bring an immediate upsurge of religion-associated fundamentalism, as many had predicted, but rather a gradual reacquaintance with the precepts of the Islamic faith. However, since 2015 there has been a slight increase in Islamist activity, with small organizations such as the Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan declaring allegiance to ISIL and contributing fighters abroad, although the terror threat in Uzbekistan itself remains low. See Terrorism in Uzbekistan. Jewish community. The Jewish community in the Uzbek lands flourished for centuries, with occasional hardships during the reigns of certain rulers. During the rule of Tamerlane in the 14th century, Jews contributed greatly to his efforts to rebuild Samarkand, and a great Jewish center was established there. After the area came under Russian rule in 1868, Jews were granted equal rights with the local Muslim population. In that period, some 50,000 Jews lived in Samarkand and 20,000 in Bukhara. After the Russian revolutions in 1917 and the establishment of the Soviet regime, Jewish religious life became restricted. By 1935, only one synagogue out of 30 remained in Samarkand. Nevertheless, underground Jewish community life continued during the Soviet era. During World War II, 1 million Jews from the European parts of the Soviet Union arrived in Uzbekistan as refugees or were exiled by Stalin. By 1970, there were 103,000 Jews registered in the Uzbek SSR. Since 1980s, most of the Jews of Uzbekistan emigrated to Israel or to the United States of America. A small community of several thousand remained in the country as of 2013. Some 7,000 lived in Tashkent, 3,000 in Bukhara and 700 in Samarkand. Languages. The Uzbek language is one of the Turkic languages close to Uyghur language, and both of them belong to the Karlut branch of the Turkic language family. It is the only official national language and since 1992 is officially written in the Latin alphabet. Before the 1920s, the written language of Uzbeks was called Turki, known to Western scholars as Chagatai, and used the Nastaliq script. In 1926, the Latin alphabet was introduced and went through several revisions throughout the 1930s. Finally, in 1940, the Cyrillic alphabet was introduced by Soviet authorities and was used until the fall of Soviet Union. In 1993, Uzbekistan shifted back to the Latin script, Uzbek alphabet, which was modified in 1996 and is being taught in schools since 2000. Educational establishments teach only the Latin notation. At the same time, the Cyrillic notation is common among the older generation. Even though the Cyrillic notation of Uzbek has now been abolished for official documents, it is still used by a number of popular newspapers and websites, whilst a few TV channels duplicate the Latin notation with the Cyrillic one. Karakalpak, a Turkic language closer to Kazakh and spoken by 500,000 people, is spoken primarily in the Republic of Kyrgyzstan and has an official status on the territory. Although the Russian language is not an official language in the country, it is widely used in many fields. Digital information from the government is bilingual. Russian is an important language for interethnic communication, especially in the cities, including much day-to-day social, technical, scientific, governmental and business use. The country is also home to approximately 1 million native Russian speakers. The Tajik language, a variety of Persian, is widespread in the cities of Bukhara and Samarkand because of the relatively large population of ethnic Tajiks. It is also found in large pockets in Kazakhstan, Khust, Rishton and Sok and Fergana Valley, as well as in Burchmula, Ahangaran, Dagestan in the Middle Sirdarya district, and finally in Shahar Sams, Karshi, Kitab and the river valleys of Kafaringan and Shaganian, forming altogether approximately 10 to 15% of the population of Uzbekistan. More than 800,000 people also speak the Kazakh language. There are no language requirements to attain citizenship in Uzbekistan. Communications. According to the official source report, as of March 10, 2008, the number of cellular phone users in Uzbekistan reached 7 million, up from 3.7 million on July 1, 2007. The largest mobile operator in terms of number of subscribers is MTS Uzbekistan, former Uzgenerobit and part of Russian Mobile Telesystems, and it is followed by Beeline, part of Russia's Beeline, and Uzel, ex-Goscom, originally part of the USMCT Corporation, now a subsidiary of the Nordic/Baltic telecommunication company Telia Sonera AB. As of July 1, 2007, the estimated number of Internet users was 1.8 million, according to UzACI. Internet censorship exists in Uzbekistan, and in October 2012 the government toughened Internet censorship by blocking access to proxy servers. Reporters Without Borders has named Uzbekistan's government an enemy of the Internet, and government control over the Internet has increased dramatically since the start of the Arab Spring. The press in Uzbekistan practices self-censorship and foreign journalists have been gradually expelled from the country since the Andijan massacre of 2005 when government troops fired into crowds of protesters killing 187 according to official reports and estimates of several hundred by unofficial and witness accounts. Transportation. Tashkent, the nation's capital and largest city, has a 3-line rapid transit system built in 1977. And expanded in 2001 after 10 years independence from the Soviet Union. Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan are currently the only 2 countries in Central Asia with a subway system. It is promoted as one of the cleanest systems in the former Soviet Union. The stations are exceedingly ornate. For example, the station Metro Kosmonavtov built in 1984 is decorated using a space travel theme to recognize the achievements of mankind in space exploration and to commemorate the role of Vladimir Janibekov, the Soviet cosmonaut of Uzbek origin. A statue of Vladimir Janibekov stands near a station entrance. There are government-operated trams and buses running across the city. There are also many taxis, registered and unregistered. Uzbekistan has plants that produce modern cars. The car production is supported by the government and the Korean auto company Daewoo. In May 2007 Daewoo Auto, the car maker, signed a strategic agreement with General Motors Daewoo Auto and Technology, GM CGM Uzbekistan also. The government bought a stake in Turkey's Koç and Samkoçavto, a producer of small buses and lorries. Afterward, it signed an agreement with Isuzu Motors of Japan to produce Isuzu buses and lorries. Train links connect many towns in Uzbekistan, as well as neighboring former republics of the Soviet Union. Moreover, after independence 2 fast-running train systems were established. Uzbekistan has launched the first high-speed railway in Central Asia in September 2011 between Tashkent and Samarkand. The new high-speed electric train Talgo 250, called Afrosiob, was manufactured by Patents Talgo S.L. Spain, and took its first trip from Tashkent to Samarkand on August 26, 2011. There is a large airplane plant that was built during the Soviet era, Tashkent Chkalov Aviation Manufacturing Plant or in Russian. The plant originated during World War II, when production facilities were evacuated south and east to avoid capture by advancing Nazi forces. Until the late 1980s, the plant was one of the leading airplane production centers in the USSR. With dissolution of the Soviet Union, its manufacturing equipment became outdated, most of the workers were laid off. Now it produces only a few planes a year, but with interest from Russian companies growing, there are rumors of production enhancement plans. Military. With close to 65,000 servicemen, Uzbekistan possesses the largest armed forces in Central Asia. The military structure is largely inherited from the Turkestan military district of the Soviet Army, although it is going through a reform to be based mainly on motorized infantry with some light and special forces. The Uzbek armed forces equipment is standard, mostly consisting those of post-Soviet inheritance and newly crafted Russian and some American equipment. The government has accepted the arms control obligations of the former Soviet Union, acceded to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, as a non-nuclear state, and supported an active program by the U.S. Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA, in western Uzbekistan, Nukus and Vozrozhdeniye Island. The government of Uzbekistan spends about 3.7% of GDP on the military but has received a growing infusion of foreign military financing, FMF, and other security assistance funds since 1998. Following the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks in the U.S., Uzbekistan approved the U.S. Central Command's request for access to an airbase, the Karshi-Khanabad airfield, in southern Uzbekistan. However, Uzbekistan demanded that the U.S. withdraw from the air bases after the Andijan massacre and the U.S. reaction to this massacre. The last U.S. troops left Uzbekistan in November 2005. On June 23, 2006, Uzbekistan became a full participant in the Collective Security Treaty Organization, CSTO, but informed the CSTO to suspend its membership in June 2012. Foreign relations. Uzbekistan joined the Commonwealth of Independent States in December 1991. However, it is opposed to reintegration and withdrew from the CIS Collective Security Arrangement in 1999. Since that time, Uzbekistan has participated in the CIS peacekeeping force in Tajikistan and in UN-organized groups to help resolve the Tajikistan and Afghanistan conflicts, both of which it sees as posing threats to its own stability. Previously close to Washington, which gave Uzbekistan $500 million in aid in 2004, about a quarter of its military budget, the government of Uzbekistan has recently restricted American military use of the airbase at Kyrgyzstan for air operations in neighboring Afghanistan. Uzbekistan was an active supporter of U.S. efforts against worldwide terrorism and joined the coalitions that have dealt with both Afghanistan and Iraq. The relationship between Uzbekistan and the United States began to deteriorate after the so-called color revolutions in Georgia and Ukraine, and to a lesser extent Kyrgyzstan. When the U.S. joined in a call for an independent international investigation of the bloody events at Andijan, the relationship further declined, and President Islam Karimov changed the political alignment of the country to bring it closer to Russia and China. In late July 2005, the government of Uzbekistan ordered the United States to vacate an air base in Kyrgyzstan, near Uzbekistan's border with Afghanistan, within 180 days. Karimov had offered use of the base to the U.S. shortly after 9/11. It is also believed by some Uzbeks that the protests in Andijan were brought about by the UK and US influences in the area of Andijan. This is another reason for the hostility between Uzbekistan and the West. Uzbekistan is a member of the United Nations, UN, since March 2, 1992, the Euro-Atlantic Partnership Council, EAPC, Partnership for Peace, PFP, and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE. It belongs to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, and the Economic Cooperation Organization, ECO, comprising the 5 Central Asian countries, Azerbaijan, Iran, Turkey, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. In 1999, Uzbekistan joined the Guam Alliance, Georgia, Ukraine, Azerbaijan and Moldova, which was formed in 1997, making it Guam, but pulled out of the organization in 2005. Uzbekistan is also a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, and hosts the SCO's Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure, RATS, in Tashkent. Uzbekistan joined the new Central Asian Cooperation Organization, CACO, in 2002. The CACO consists of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan. It is a founding member of, and remains involved in, the Central Asian Union, formed with Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, and joined in March 1998 by Tajikistan. In September 2006, UNESCO presented Islam Karimov an award for Uzbekistan's preservation of its rich culture and traditions. Despite criticism, this seems to be a sign of improving relationships between Uzbekistan and the West. The month of October 2006 also saw a decrease in the isolation of Uzbekistan from the West. The EU announced that it was planning to send a delegation to Uzbekistan to talk about human rights and liberties, after a long period of hostile relations between the two. Although it is equivocal about whether the official or unofficial version of the Andijan massacre is true, the EU is evidently willing to ease its economic sanctions against Uzbekistan. Nevertheless, it is generally assumed among Uzbekistan's population that the government will stand firm in maintaining its close ties with the Russian Federation and in its theory that the 2004 to 2005 protests in Uzbekistan were promoted by the US and UK. In January 2008, Lola Karimova-Tilyaeva was appointed to her current role as Uzbekistan's ambassador to UNESCO. Karimova-Tilyaeva and her team have been instrumental in promoting intercultural dialogue by increasing European society's awareness of Uzbekistan's cultural and historical heritage. Culture. Uzbekistan has a wide mix of ethnic groups and cultures, with the Uzbek being the majority group. In 1995, about 71% of Uzbekistan's population was Uzbek. The chief minority groups were Russians, 8%, Tajiks, 3 to 4.7%, Kazakhs, 4%, Tatars, 2.5%, and Karakalpaks, 2%. It is said, however, that the number of non-Uzbek people living in Uzbekistan is decreasing as Russians and other minority groups slowly leave and Uzbeks return from other parts of the former Soviet Union. When Uzbekistan gained independence in 1991, there was concern that Muslim fundamentalism would spread across the region. The expectation was that a country long denied freedom of religious practice would undergo a very rapid increase in the expression of its dominant faith. As of 1994, over half of Uzbekistan's population was said to be Muslim, though in an official survey few of that number had any real knowledge of the religion or knew how to practice it. However, Islamic observance is increasing in the region. Music. Central Asian classical music is called shashmakam, which arose in Bukhara in the late 16th century when that city was a regional capital. Shashmakam is closely related to Azerbaijani mugam and Uyghur makam. The name, which translates as six makam, refers to the structure of the music, which contains 6 sections and 6 different musical modes, similar to classical Persian traditional music. Interludes of spoken Sufi poetry interrupt the music, typically beginning at a lower register and gradually ascending to a climax before calming back down to the beginning tone. Education. Uzbekistan has a high literacy rate, with about 99.3% of adults above the age of 15 being able to read and write. However, with only 76% of the under 15 population currently enrolled in education, and only 20% of the 3 to 6-year-olds attending preschool, this figure may drop in the future. Students attend school Monday through Saturday during the school year, and education officially concludes at the end of the 12th grade. There are 2 international schools operating in Uzbekistan, both in Tashkent, the British school catering for elementary students only, and Tashkent International School, a K-12 international curriculum school. Uzbekistan has encountered severe budget shortfalls in its education program. The Education Law of 1992 began the process of theoretical reform, but the physical base has deteriorated and curriculum revision has been slow. A large contributor to this decline is the low level of wages received by teachers and the lack of spending on infrastructure, buildings and resources on behalf of the government. Corruption within the education system is also rampant, with students from wealthier families routinely bribing teachers and school executives to achieve high grades without attending school, or undertaking official examinations. Uzbekistan's universities create almost 600,000 graduates annually, though the general standard of university graduates, and the overall level of education within the tertiary system, is low. Several universities, including Westminster University, Turin University, Management University Institute of Singapore, Buchan University in Tashkent and Inha University Tashkent maintain a campus in Tashkent offering English language courses across several disciplines. The Russian language higher education is provided by most national universities, including foreign Moscow State University and Gubkin Russian State University of Oil and Gas, maintaining campuses in Tashkent. As of 2019, Webster University, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, has opened a graduate school offering an MBA in Project Management and a MA in Teaching English as a Second Language, TESL. Holidays. Variable date. Cuisine. Uzbek cuisine is influenced by local agriculture, as in most nations. There is a great deal of grain farming in Uzbekistan, so breads and noodles are of importance, and Uzbek cuisine has been characterized as noodle-rich. Mutton is a popular variety of meat due to the abundance of sheep in the country, and it is part of various Uzbek dishes. Uzbekistan's signature dish is palov, plovarash, a main course typically made with rice, pieces of meat, and grated carrots and onions. Oshi nahor, or morning plov, is served in the early morning, between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m., to large gatherings of guests, typically as part of an ongoing wedding celebration. Other notable national dishes include shurpa, shurva or shorva, a soup made of large pieces of fatty meat, usually mutton, and fresh vegetables, norin and logman, noodle-based dishes that may be served as a soup or a main course, manti, chachvara, and samsa, stuffed pockets of dough served as an appetizer or a main course, dimlama, a meat and vegetable stew, and various kebabs, usually served as a main course. Green tea is the national hot beverage consumed throughout the day. Tea houses, chaikhanas, are of cultural importance. Black tea is preferred in Tashkent, but both green and black teas are consumed daily, without milk or sugar. Tea always accompanies a meal, but it is also a drink of hospitality that is automatically offered, green or black, to every guest. Iran, a chilled yogurt drink, is popular in summer, but does not replace hot tea. The use of alcohol is less widespread than in the West, but wine is comparatively popular for a Muslim nation as Uzbekistan is largely secular. Uzbekistan has 14 wineries, the oldest and most famous being the Kovrenko winery in Samarkand, established in 1927. The Samarkand winery produces a range of dessert wines from local grape varieties, Gulyakondos, Shirin, Alidiko, and Cabernet Likurno, literally Cabernet dessert wine in Russian. Uzbek wines have received international awards and are exported to Russia and other countries. Sport. Uzbekistan is home to former racing cyclist Jamaluddin Abdujaparov. Abdujaparov has won the Green Jersey Points contest in the Tour de France 3 times. Abdujaparov was a specialist at winning stages in tours or one-day races when the bunch or peloton would finish together. He would often sprint in the final kilometer and had a reputation as being dangerous in these bunch sprints as he would weave from side to side. This reputation earned him the nickname the Terror of Tashkent. Artur Taymazov won Uzbekistan's first wrestling medal at the 2000 Summer Olympic Games, as well as 3 gold medals at the 2004, 2008 Summer Olympic Games and 2012 Summer Olympic Games in men's 120 kilograms. Ruslan Chagayev is a former professional boxer representing Uzbekistan in the WBA. He won the WBA champion title in 2007 after defeating Nikolai Volyev. Chagayev defended his title twice before losing it to Vladimir Klitschko in 2009. Another young talented boxer Hasanboy Dusmatov, light flyweight champion at the 2016 Summer Olympics, won the Val Barker Trophy for the Outstanding Male Boxer of Rio 2016 on August 21, 2016. On December 21, 2016, Dusmatov was honored with the IBA Boxer of the Year award at a 70-year anniversary event of IBA. Michael Kolganov, a sprint canoer, was world champion and won an Olympic bronze in the K1 500-meter. Gymnast Alexander Shatilov won a world bronze as an artistic gymnast in floor exercise, and gymnast Oksana Chusovitina has amassed over 70 medals for the country. Uzbekistan is the home of the International Kurash Association. Kurash is an internationalized and modernized form of traditional Uzbek wrestling. Football is the most popular sport in Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan's premier football league is the Uzbek League, which has consisted of 16 teams since 2015. The current champions, 2016, are Lokomotiv Tashkent. Paktikor holds the record for the most Uzbekistan champion titles, having won the league 10 times. The current player of the year, 2015, is Odil Akhmedov. Uzbekistan's football clubs regularly participate in the AFC Champions League and the AFC Cup. Nasif won AFC Cup in 2011, the first international club cup for Uzbek football. UMO Tashkent, a professional ice hockey team, was established in 2019 with the aim of joining Continental Hockey League, KHL, a top-level Eurasian league in future. UMO will join the second-tier Supreme Hockey League, VHL, for the 2019-20 season. UMO play their games at the UMO Ice Dome, which costed over €175 million in construction. Both the team and arena derive their name from the mythical huma bird, a symbol of happiness and freedom. Uzbekistan Hockey Federation, UHF, began preparation for forming national ice hockey team and joining EIH competitions. Before Uzbekistan's independence in 1991, the country used to be part of the Soviet Union football, rugby union, basketball, ice hockey, and handball national teams. After independence, Uzbekistan created its own football, rugby union, basketball and futsal national teams. Tennis is also a very popular sport in Uzbekistan, especially after Uzbekistan's independence in 1991. Uzbekistan has its own tennis federation called the UTF, Uzbekistan Tennis Federation, created in 2002. Uzbekistan also hosts an international WTA tennis tournament, the Tashkent Open, held in Uzbekistan's capital city. This tournament has been held since 1999, and is played on outdoor hard courts. The most notable active players from Uzbekistan are Denis Istomin and Akil Mordova. Chess is quite popular in Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan-born Rustam Kasimjanov was the FIDE World Chess Champion in 2004. Other popular sports in Uzbekistan include basketball, judo, team handball, baseball, taekwondo, and futsal ball, 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 baseball, taekwondo, and futsal ball,